How you doing, Brian?
Hey, good. How are you?
A long day, but I'm all right, man. I think I'll make it.
Yeah.
Uh,
What you been busy with?
oh God, I'm just finishing up a class at Cornell in food science and climate change, and I had to get my last paper, and I just turned in 5 minutes ago. I've been at it all day, so
Nice.
you know.
What was the paper on?
The risk to a company I'm invested in called Farm Together, and specifically on the almond orchards in California, which is one of the properties. So, but anyway, hey, looks like Darshana and Maureen are on, so I'll shut up.
Hello, how are you?
I'm well, Darshana, how are you?
Bye. Bye. How are you? How was your test? Hello, Brian and everybody.
Hello.
How was your test, Brian? Charles?
Oh, good. I got an extension on a paper I had to finish for that class we discussed, and I just got it in 5 minutes ago, got it submitted, so.
Yeah, you look exhausted. You must have studied a lot.
Yeah, and I fixed myself an amaretto and soda to celebrate, so.
Oh, very good. Good job.
Thank you.
Hi, Brian.
Hello. How are you?
I'm good. I'm also coming from work. And what do you call it?
How's Boston?
I'm sorry?
How is Boston?
Boston is good, no problem. 90 degrees yesterday, today is 70 degrees, so it's like fluctuating. But work is a lot. And now they are changing entire system that I'm used to. And now everything is changed. So like we have to do a lot of training. And by the time I'm done training, I think time to come back. so anyway.
Yeah, well, it's a fun city, so.
Yeah, I love it.
Our climate reality website team, so they can get that on the website so other people can watch as well. So thanks everyone for joining. This is our June meeting of the Climate Reality Plastic Coalition. We've got a good agenda for today. As we were alluding to a few minutes ago, we do have a special speaker today, Peter Bella, to talk about the future of fossil fuels, and plastics ? Is kind of the tease on that. Is that the future of fossil fuels? We'll get to Peter in a few moments, but I do want to let other members of the group join. So I thought we could talk about a few other things while we get there. One of the purposes of this meeting is to kind of give everyone an update on what we're working on and things going on in the plastics world, and to kind of collaborate and share. So one of the things that the group has been working on is we've been trying to advocate and keep track of SB 1276, which was in the Texas legislature, both on the Senate side and on the House side, and it was being led by the Texans for Clean Water, kind of pushing that. And the main focus of that bill is that it would have a statewide refundable bottle deposit, which would then be able to fund bottle refund stations at grocery stores and different, places around the cities statewide. So we could get some of those bottles that were making their way into the, storm drains and into our lakes and rivers and streams into the recycling stream. I know that we all believe that our recycling rate is a paltry, number, and, whatever we can do to increase that is good. So I got an update on that bill today, and I did share a couple other times that you can do that as well if you'd like, with Maya Corbett from Texans for Clean Water. I believe there's one more tomorrow. And what she said, the bill never made it out of committee on either side of the House or the Senate. And she shared with me some information about this legislative session, which I'll send out an email later about, that kind of breaks down each legislative session and how many bills were introduced and how many made it out of committee. And she said this wasn't that abnormal. But she said the interesting thing about this bill is it got no vocal opposition. So there was no one saying, let's keep this bill, tied up. Let's not get it on the floor. Let's not get it to a vote. So she was kind of surprised by that, because in the past, when this has been talked about, it's had a lot of vocal opposition. So that's a good thing. Now, the other things that she talked about for 2023 is that the authors that introduced the bill are both going to be running again for re-election. And we don't expect that if they do become re-elected, we do expect them to reintroduce the bills and sponsor them. So we expect that this will be back in 2023. But she did mention a few next steps before that, because we don't want to sit on our back feet waiting. So we're going to focus on continuing educating in Texas. That will still, get this bill out there and let people know it's important. We'll support national efforts that would apply to Texas. And this is kind of the big thing that's about to happen in July. So the Break Free from Plastic Pollutions Act has been introduced in the House of Representatives, as well as in the Senate, in the federal government. And it's been kind of on pause as they try to get through the infrastructure bills. But we heard an update from Heidi Sanborn from the National Stewardship Action Council. And the update she gave was that on July 7th, there's supposed to be a big push of a PR campaign and a really heavy press nationally to get the actual Break Free from Plastics Pollution Act brought to the floor and to get a vote. She also talked about that there's a possibility that they're going to take the national bottle refund part of it and do it separately. So I've always been an advocate that, if you want a big bill passed, you're going to get it's going to be really hard to do. But if you can get a smaller bill passed that has bipartisan support, it can sometimes be easier. So they might try to chunk past this, where instead of trying to pass it as a huge bill that has a lot of special interest and a lot of detractors, they might try to get it across the goal line in a smaller bill. So she said what we can do as an advocacy group is get ready, get our email list together, get our social media accounts ready. And she said on July 7th, she's going to be emailing out before that a list of messaging and a list of graphics, so we can be ready to go forward with supporting that bill once they release the national campaign for it. So a little bit of wait and see, a little bit of good news that there's not a whole lot of opposition in Texas against that bill that was introduced, but for now it sounds like we're doing a little waiting game. Has anyone heard anything else on that issue or those bills?
I don't have news on those bills. Darshana, if you do, then feel free to speak.
I'm sorry?
I have a legislative bit to just mention, but Darshana, if you have something that's directly related to what Brian was talking about, then go ahead.
Yeah, those two representatives that I said, I think I sent an email to you, Brian, correct? Those two names from California?
Yes.
So isn't it good to reach out to them and maybe call them at our meeting, or at least know their side, because they are actually putting that bill forward. So maybe we should somehow talk to them.
That's a good point, Darshana. And the two names they gave me that I believe are North Texas representatives that sit on the committees that are looking at the bill at the federal level are Congressman Mark Veazey, who is in Fort Worth, and then Van Taylor, who is up in Plano. So her comment was that, these two are ones that are going to be fighting for re-election coming up in 2022. So they might be good ones to target to try to get them to be vocal since we're in their kind of area. But I do like the idea of reaching out nationally and doing some of that. So I'll go ahead and put together the contact forms so we can get a hold of them, and a little form letter that we can send via email. That should help.
Thank you.
Yeah, that'd be good. Any other legislative stuff that we've heard about?
So what I was going to mention was, I'm on the Surfrider newsletter. I try to stay in touch with what they're doing. I've not been able to attend any of the chapter meetings for the Gulf Coast chapter yet, but they just recently put out some information about the OBCSA, which is the Ocean-Based Climate Solutions Act, and it's touches on more things than plastic, but what I thought was interesting is that part of this bill is an excise tax on virgin plastic for single-use plastic products. So I think that's something to keep an eye on, and it's another bill that we can advocate for. I'll drop a couple of links into the chat for your reference.
Yeah, thank you. And that's a federal legislation, right?
Correct.
Yeah, I saw that email. I just hadn't had a chance to read it. Yeah, that looks good. Okay. So yeah, we will have some marching orders soon on what we need to do at the federal level for break free from plastics. We'll also keep an update on this the Surf Riders bill that they're pushing through. So yeah, I think there's a lot of good momentum. Haven't heard anything about break free from plastics or plastic free president recently about Biden and his thoughts, but he's been a little busy with infrastructure and his worldly travels. But I think that's kind of the backstop. If we can't get this through legislative actions, we'll get it through the president. All right, so that's one thing we want to talk about tonight. The next thing before we get to our special guest is Maureen was gracious enough a few weeks ago to kind of put together a spreadsheet with the idea of let's find some companies that we can go on the consumer basis and give them our money to support what they're doing to break free from plastics and to get out of the plastic structure of the economy. So I'm going to go ahead. Maureen, do you want me to share my screen and we can talk about it as we go through it? That help? Okay. So what we did, I'm going to drop this into into our chat area too. So Maureen, tell us a little bit about this list here and which companies you like and how you came up with it.
Okay, thank you. When I first came to Texas, I was horrified. I was astounded with the beauty of the trees and the creeks and horrified by the amount of plastic in the creeks. And so I became this eccentric person lying on the banks, gathering plastic out, making plastic bouquets and sending photos and posting them on media. One of the things I did was to write to some of the companies whose logos were stamped on the plastic bags. And one of them, Trader Joe's, responded and said that they were going to experiment with using less plastic in their produce. So the reason I put this together was because I imagined that we in the chapter, or chapters in this case, could act as a kind of a consumer block, that we could share local businesses that were trying to or intended to go without plastic, and support them and encourage them by saying there's 250 people, potential customers that would support them in doing this. The other thing I thought we could do was that if in my email to Trader Joe's, I'd said, I represent 200 customers. So instead of just experimenting with less plastic in California, how about doing it in my local or our local Trader Joe's? I thought we could push, pressure them. So what I did was a sweep on the internet, and I looked particularly for companies that worked online, because I thought that we could work with them even though they weren't local. There's one on here that's one of my favorites that started this off, which is a soap company that makes shampoo and soap without any plastic. It's located in Pasadena, California. It's item 9, I think. And they do it, they can do it in person or by email. I like them for a couple of reasons. One, because of the no plastic. And 2, because when I use the soap, I can, I know, I've met them, I know who they are. And 3, they're a small business. And I can't think of another good reason, but I thought that I would start this, open it up to our group, and have you plug in any businesses that you think belong on there. And then from there, perhaps we could go to the whole chapter, so that people in Mesquite and Plano and places that I'm not even sure where they are, although I do know where San Antonio and Austin are, could add to it. So that's it, basically. Just looking at us as a consumer block.
Yeah, and I love that idea. The rabbit hole that I wanted to go down, which I was trying to struggle to not go down, is what rating systems are there for companies and their sustainability and their plastic usage or non-usage and packaging and so forth. That's kind of a rhetorical question. I don't know the answer to that. Is there anything that's out there that like is a stamp of approval right now for sustainability? I know there's like conscious capitalist companies, there's some of the other different labels. What labels do you all look for?
I'd like to jump in on that, because I looked at Patagonia, one of my favorite, and discovered that they have a big plastic problem. However, they do acknowledge it. And it seems to me that groups like ours could also encourage them to continue not only looking into how to have less plastic, because there's a huge amount of plastic in clothing, but also perhaps find out if they have a particular standard that they're measuring their efforts by.
Okay. And I see Ryan just posted, it's a where to grocery shop, zero waste grocery guide for Texas, Litterless, which is a pretty cool resource.
Yeah.
Sustainable Fish Industry Group, and plastic is sometimes overlooked.
Great, thanks, Ryan.
Thanks for that, Peter. So, I really love this idea of, because I know we've talked about this, that if we can not shame companies into changing, but show them that there is a capitalist incentive to change and put our dollars where our mouths are, et cetera, that could help. So I love this idea. And this is a shareable document. So I believe if anyone, does want to add something in here, they can do that. The question at some point will be is, when do we want to introduce this to the chapter and possibly put it on the website, and how would we want to keep it updated and that type of thing. Because I think Maureen's idea is a good one, is to, let's use economies of scale and push people. Liz, you have a question or comment?
Yeah, thank you so much, Maureen, for doing this. This is fantastic. Is Litterless, I'm just clicking into their website, are they national or is it just about Texas? Do you know?
Seems like they're wider focused, and that they have certain pages for different regions.
Okay, that's interesting. Because that's what I was wondering, if the Break Free from Plastic people had some sort of a, an online resource that people around the country could follow. The other thing I was going to say is I'm going to be in New York in July. I'm going to be going up to the Northeast so I can check out that store actually. Well, it says it's online, but it's at the Chelsea Market. I used to work at a company that was in the Chelsea Market actually. So I'm like, well, what was the other thing I was going to say that, a comment about Trader Joe's. The thing that's fascinating about them is they have so many employees that are working there already. It seems like I'm wondering if we should just ask them if there's any way that they could also help transition to being a bulk store at some point. I know that sounds radical, but like, I think that is something that Jane was thinking about, is this idea that is what's going to have to happen, is stores, right, transitioning to this bulk model. And they already it seems like they already have so many employees in there that for them to run like a bulk store, if they would experiment with it. I mean, I wonder if somebody's already asked them that, or if somebody could approach them with that idea. I know that's a kind of a big picture type of thing.
Well, big picture is good.
Yeah.
Can I say something? Maureen, I just want to really thank you for this. This is something I've been trying to get our chapter people to work on, to build out for local vendors. And again, not to shame anyone, but to really promote people who are engaged in the type of consumerism that we want to promote as a chapter. I haven't had any luck with it. Nobody's wanted to take it on, and yet we have people who are very interested in it. So I've already posted that your spreadsheet on our Discord channel. Hope you don't mind, at least a picture of it. And I'm going to use that to try to push our people to add to it on a local level. If we could do it all over Texas, I think that would be a wonderful thing to do. I mean, HEB is obviously the big fish here. And any traction we could get with them, I think would be wonderful.
I think that this may be in your neck of the woods, Charles, but there's a shop called the Wally.
The Woolly, as in woolly mammal, or woolly mammoth, or what?
WAL. I'm sorry, it's my speech impediment. There's a shop called the Wally. I think it's on the list. And
Wally.
I got conflicting messages. One that said it had gone out of business, which made me really upset. So a grocery store, and yet I'm getting emails from them. So
it's in Austin?
I think so. I don't have the spreadsheet available. But
when you get is it on the spreadsheet?
I think so.
Okay. If not, if you want to forward me one of those emails, I'd be most appreciative.
Okay. Yeah. Anyway, and just one little note, and that is, I put the date that we did the entries at the end because I wanted to have a sense of how recent the entries were. I also thought if someone started it, it's always easier for people to jump in and add one line than it is to go, how many columns do I want? What data do I want?
Yep, exactly. Make it easy.
Yeah, the other thing, my data skills aren't as good as they used to be, but I was thinking it would be great if it could be somewhat searchable, or you could use like sorting. So if you wanted to look at household cleaners, it would show you all the household cleaner companies. Maybe it's not that big that it's that difficult to sort, but I was about to
take a look at doing something like that.
You're right.
Adding the sortability to the columns
Yeah.
should be fairly easy. So yeah, I'll look at implementing that. I'll make a note of that.
Cool. Thanks, Ryan. I knew it was easy or possible to do. It just exceeded my abilities and my 16-year-old son. So like, come on, you're on your computer and your phone all day. You should be able to do this. He's like, I don't know data. I did data entry.
So, Brian, I have one point in this conversation. Some companies like pharma industry or food industry or even personal care industries, some industries, they cannot live without plastic because it's a sterility issue. It's a issue that affects, contamination issue. So they cannot live without plastic. So what they do is they do carbon offsetting, meaning they are just trying to do things that can promote other way, which is like tree planting or something. I'm just giving you one small example. But they do that type of work. And like I used to work in Chanel before, and they're very private people, private company, but they do a lot of work in terms of sustainability because they use a lot of plastic. So to offset that, they do that kind of work. So sometimes we don't know, but things are happening behind the door.
Mhm.
It's a good point, Darshana, because I know that hospitals and medical use a lot of plastic and they need to. It may be that the kind of plastic that we can hopefully get rid of, those stupid single-use bags,
Mhm.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah, and I know there's a holy grail out there of one company that does it all. I haven't seen it yet, but it's I'm challenged right now by, okay, if I want to buy my laundry detergent from here, I have to go to one site. If I want to buy this from here, I have to go to one site. It would be nice to have it all consolidated somewhere. I guess, that's where HEB would come in, where if you could go to your local store and do all that, that would be wonderful. We'll get there.
Thank you.
Yes, and Charles, thank you for putting your information in the chat. If you haven't been to our meeting before, please do that so we can add you to our list and so forth. All right, so Ryan and Brittany, if you have anything else to say before we get into our presentation, I do want to give our vice chairs a chance to give any updates on things that you've seen or things going on with the chapter.
I was just going to say, well, I actually attended one of the meetings around the plastic recycling bill that was being trying to be put through the Texas legislature. And I found that really interesting. And it did sound like that there's going to be a few special sessions. So there may still be an opportunity to get that maybe moved through a little further, was my understanding. So I thought that was really interesting and exciting.
Yeah, if it hasn't come out of committee, though, it won't be considered in special session, is my understanding. But I think special session is only for those bills that have to be reconciled.
We are in a climate emergency.
Would be nice, so maybe we could vote on it here and they take it up.
That would be nice. Okay. Well, I appreciate that, Brittany. Yeah, I was on the call today, so I guess we crossed paths on different calls. But it's good that they did that to have a debrief.
Mm-hmm.
There is one more tomorrow, I believe. So if anyone wants to get on for that chance, and I'll post some information in the chat with some of the resources they gave us. But it definitely sounds like the National Stewardship Action Council is going to be the one kind of pushing through this next thing federally. So, all right.
Is that, sorry, Brian, is that Rita's call you're talking about, or is it something else?
Oh, the call with Texans for Clean Water.
Oh, okay. Got it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure. Okay. Well, without further ado, Peter. So I want to first thank Darshana for introducing us to Peter as a possible speaker for tonight. So Peter's the former director with the Natural Resources Department and the Alamo Area Council of Governments, and he's retired. So he might have a little bit more time on his hands to advocate for these types of things. So Peter, I'm going to go ahead. Would you like me to let you share the screen so you can kind of take over? Great. And I
That'll
think
be
I
fine.
need
Thanks,
to
Brian.
make you a admin to do that. So give me 1 second here. So I'm going to make you the host, and then you can go ahead and share your screen when you're ready.
Very good. So thanks, everybody. I appreciate very much being able to present to you today. My name is Peter Bella. I was trained in July 2020 as a climate reality project leader. I retired in 2014 as head of the Natural Resources Department with the Alamo Area Council of Governments. We worked on ground level ozone policy and technical analysis for local governments, which gave me a background in air quality. But I'm here to simply lay on the table some of the information I've come up with on the subject of plans the plastic industry has. So let's get started. And also, I have to admit, I'm not a specialist or an expert in this. This is something that in my perambulations I've come up with and told Darshan about it, and she thought it might be worth sharing. We usually start with these 3 questions as climate reality leaders when we're making presentations. And if we focus on the use of fossil fuels, when we ask this question, must we change? There's a Pandora's box of difficulties which impact the environment, which open up. We usually deal with the pollution from oil and gas production and its use as fuel that cause climate change, but in fact, the impacts on human health are direct as well. There are primary and secondary chemistries that impact, well, when I say I work with ground level ozone, that's a secondary chemical caused by photochemical reactions in the air of oil and gas waste, exhausts basically, and other products. So just to glance over the topic, some of the health impacts are respiratory in nature. I also listened to a series of lectures on endocrine disruption, which led down the path I'll present today. We're all familiar with impacts on soil due to oil and gas production, such as the filth from oil spills in pipelines and the difficulties pipelines can allow us, shall I say. When we widen our lens beyond air, water, and soil pollution due to fossil fuels, it's easy to consider the damage to the environment and other uses of fossil fuels. As plastic waste enters the biosphere, microplastics can be ingested, and they're in rain. They've filtered up the food chain sufficiently, such as I'm sure you're aware. There are reports that we ingest about 5 grams a day, about a credit card in mass of microplastics in the food we eat. I call microplastic bioinvasive here because in a 2019 TED interview, a biologist reported that microplastics can cross the blood-brain barrier, the protective coating which is there to protect your brain. And while it's not clear what the direct impacts on our brain function are, it's just not clear yet. And it's estimated that, as again, I would imagine people understand here in this group especially, in a business as usual scenario, the ocean is expected to contain more plastics than fish by weight by 2050. Right now, some 7 to 10% of all crude oil goes into chemical production, and 4 to 5% goes into the production of plastics, according to what I've read reported by the plastics industry. Most of the rest of the oil and natural gas is used in energy production, as this chart shows. This is energy consumption in the United States in 2020. You'll see in these categorizations, the natural gas and coal provide energy and electricity generation, as well as transportation energy. US transportation fuel consumption accounts for over 70% of total US oil energy consumption by sources, and more than 65% of that amount is for personal vehicles. So this chart again, energy consumption by sources and sinks, as we might say. Well, what happens in our homes? What happens as our homes become more efficient? Cars become electric, passenger cars and even long-haul transportation begins to eat away at the use of that petroleum. switching to renewables for energy consumption with increased efficiency, is not going to turn off this fossil fuel production pipeline. So I'm calling this diagram, in a best case scenario, old school, because we will not see consumption of fossil fuels for energy generation. Again, that's a best case scenario. This chart from British Petroleum shows oil demand growth forecast for the next 20 years. At the far end of the graph, you can see that the demand for oil, the growth in demand, is expected for industry to decline in power generation and as used in buildings. And while demand does continue to grow somewhat for vehicles in the next 20 years, my focus here is clearly on the left-hand bar. Oil due to plastics production. Excuse me. This graphic was the one that got me a little bit startled, shall we say. I saw a presentation on endocrine disruption by this Dr. Vandenberg that you see with the quote at the bottom of the slide. And the information is from a group called Grid Arundel, which works with the United Nations Environmental Program. So I trust their graphic and their facts, their projections. So again, global chemical sales from the industry supposed to go up. And over the next 20 to 30 years, there is going to be an exponential production of plastics around the world, which is going to be great for the industries that are going to sell us this stuff. You might be familiar with these kinds of details up to this point. The question in my mind, and the point of my presentation, having seen this and knowing the musculature with which industry approaches this topic, is how do we look at it? How do we think about it? Because again, I think that, well, maybe people don't think in the terms that these investments take years to pay off, is the bottom line. So if a pipeline is put up, it's put up for years. There has to be a great deal of oil that goes through the pipeline before the thing is paid off. So there's a return on investment that is not just, frankly, in pollution, but it also is in years. So chemical industry has invested $97 billion in new expanded facilities. These 229 projects are completed and operating. Another 40 projects valued at over $31 billion under construction. So again, what I'm trying to illustrate here is the muscle that is put into the use of shale gas in this particular case, but altogether in oil and gas that is being produced now. We do not anticipate a reduction in production for the sake of electric vehicles and our more efficient homes and their insulation.
Definitely cloudy, and it's definitely blowing a gale, and I've got the salt water lapping my truck tires right now. This old truck is going to rust to pieces if I don't watch it.
Diane Wilson is an activist who is a third generation shrimper, Matagorda and Atascosa Bay area. She went on a hunger strike that just ended middle of last month, 40 days or so, because she was concerned that the dredging of the Matagorda ship channel and the Atascosa Bay channel would dredge up what is known, what is acknowledged as a Superfund mercury site in the channel. The water is polluted and it's under the sediment. And there is move afoot to create a deep water port to get some of the very large crude carriers and natural gas vessels an ability to anchor there and take the commerce they create to another level, enabled by larger and larger vessels. She has a bit of a reputation because this is not her first rodeo. She's 72 years old, but in fact, she was successful and again, I hope people are familiar with this, the idea that there is Formosa on the coast that produces the pellets that are used as feedstock for plastic production worldwide. And they were making a mess of the coast, to be gentle. And she took them to court. And there you can see there are a number of partners that were in on the lawsuit, but she won. And there's a $50 million settlement, part of which is, as you see in that second paragraph in the text, the money will be poured into a trust over the next 5 years, which it's now active, and used to pay for programs supporting pollution mitigation, habitat restoration, public education, and other environmental efforts on the Middle Texas Gulf Coast. Now, I presented that slice on her life and work because I think that it's not unlikely, in my experience, it's not unlikely, that we have a growing number, despite the fact she's 72 years old, there is a growing number of people who are activists. And quite frankly, I think that's what it's going to take, both in magnitude and in comprehensive planning. You may or may not be familiar with this document. It's online. I can give you the link. The idea is that during the 87th legislative session we just finished, TxDOT's Marine Division supplied this document to the legislature. And for improvements of the Gulf Coast when it comes to being the machine for delivery of goods and services up and down the coast. They highlight the value of trade with their worldwide partners. As is known, that is, they're growing their trade. That's the point. They're growing it through enriching, as it were, the capabilities of the ports to handle these goodies. This is one of the pages out of the document, which shows, again, all up and down the coast, abilities. I mean, everything from parking to pipeline infrastructure to docks to what it takes to make the capacity grow for import and export to the tune of over $2 billion in this particular 2-year cycle. Another page out of the book emphasizes ship channel improvements, including Port of Galveston. And I emphasize this slide in the sense that this is the past history of oil and gas exports using vessels in these docks, in these facilities. They're ramping up. Top 10 export commodities include plastics, organic chemicals, miscellaneous chemical products. Texas is strengthening its coastal infrastructure to provide export capabilities, which can enable the growth at all levels of plastics commodities. It is again, when I found this document and I started to talk with people about it, we mud wrestle with the legislature every session. And we see pluses and minuses, failures in education, funding. There's any number of, I anticipate from your discussion that you will have followed the session. And it's been a wretched one for the environment. It's been a wretched one. In my mind, the level that we are dealing with, there's a lot to say about the value of lawsuits and of dealing with legal procedures. And I'm very much a champion of working with the legislature because that's how things change. But my real point is that I'm afraid that they are working behind the scenes with incredible wealth, vision, and industry, and the industry of their industries. And unless we wake up to it, and again, I'm not calling for everybody to get in the streets as soon as this call is over. I'm simply saying that we should be aware of the changes that they are promoting. And as you see in my text here, I think there's great value in groups like Climate Reality and all of its ancillary groups that take on these other issues like plastics. Clearly, you've got more than skin in the game. I'm trying to work with and promote other groups, and we can talk about the other groups, but it needs to be more muscular and more dedicated than either Diane Wilson and her award-winning single-man efforts, or even what I see happening in the local, all of the environmental groups in Texas. And that's simply because they are at work. They are at work, and I just had this glimpse of their project ideas. Now, we have had wins, right? Folks may or may not be familiar with this. This is a mixed bag in the certain sense that there were international investors who decided they really didn't want to have products that had the potential for damage. And there is cost, there are other factors involved, but the bottom line remains that this is a case in which in the Rio Grande Valley, there was a natural gas project that went under. And we're all familiar, I'm sure folks are familiar just this last couple of days, that the Keystone XL pipeline has been formally abandoned by TC Energy, the folks who operate it, or were trying to operate it. And that's a 10-year battle. My anticipation is that we can do it again, we can continue it, we can work and leverage off these, but that it really needs, right, a really big effort. So that is my talk. I'll stop my share and thank you for your time.
That was great. Thank you, Peter. Questions for Peter? I have a couple, but I'll let everyone else go first.
I just want to say great graphics, great information. I sent a number of those images through our Discord channel when I saw them. Absolutely frightening. This push for plastics in order to preserve their economic benefits and increase the damage they've already done for so many years. It's just frightening. And I've seen this in Washington where I lived. I've seen this in California with the infrastructure. And I think the legal challenges are something there are going to have to be more of. You said you want to work with the legislature, but the only way you're going to work with the Texas legislature is to elect new people. And, that's it. That's the only way to work with them. So, but anyway, it's a good presentation. I appreciate it. What do we do next? That's the question.
And excuse me, but Brian, I'm not seeing a widget or something where I can give you back the host.
I think it's under participants, and then you can just click on my little.
Oh, okay.
And it's like in the more drop down.
Make host.
Yep.
You demand.
All right. So Charles kind of brought up a question that I had about what happened with that report to the state legislature from needing all these port improvements. Did that fall on deaf ears, or was there a certain amount budgeted for it, or what's the status of that?
I do not know. I do not know the status of that. I don't know where it was, where the document, it was expressly written for the 87th legislature, so I'm sure that it went somewhere.
Right.
And again, it was TxDOT's, marine authorities. Yeah, I can't tell you, probably some transportation group. But I have to, again, we all know Texas and the idea of this not being favorably received and acted upon in whatever measure it would be that the state would have anything to do with it. That's my guess, but I don't know.
Yeah, definitely.
And I'll get the link. I'll put the link to the thing.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, that was fascinating, tying it together from their dredging so that way they can export more plastics and chemicals. I mean, it's diabolical, actually.
Yeah, and it feels under the radar too.
Do we have other questions for Peter?
Well, Brian, a couple of us, now several of us are trying to be polite and use the raise hand function. But my hand was raised first, so I'm going to ask my question. But it depends on you to notice that and then call on people, I think. So Peter, I'm really intrigued on the one hand by your expression. We need to be more muscular, and it sounds like you're thinking in terms of organizing across multiple climate and environmental groups. So here's a dilemma that I think I encounter with some regularity here in Dallas Fort Worth in trying to think along those lines. It has to do with the distinction between people who are interested in making change as opposed to people who are interested in being in charge. There are a number of people who think of themselves as activists, get involved in a number of things as long as they're in charge of the effort. But when you try to talk with them about collaboration or joint effort, there doesn't seem to be a doorway there that you can go through, because that means giving up some of their control. They're feeling that they're in charge, and therefore I think that they're going to get the credit for whatever happens. So I'm curious about you're nodding. I'm curious about your take on that issue, and how do we manage that across groups with those kinds of strong leaders, but people who are not that collaborative, it seems.
Well, that's a very good question. Thanks, Roger. What I am doing is finding groups and finding people like, for instance, Diane. She's an incredibly strong leader, in fact, but she appreciates independence and is willing to give everybody that independence. That's a poor example, really, because it's a one-off. I am finding leadership in groups as they sort of appear. In other words, I'm a little wary of the classical groups like Sierra Club and some of the big international groups, because they seem ready to absorb or be authorities in a sense that I know what you mean. And again, that really is, I mean, I haven't approached Sierra Club on this, but I'm finding groups that are along the coast. For instance, right now, where is he? Oh, Ryan talked a little about Surfrider. I'm working with a group now on the coast that folks like Errol Summerlin and Teresa Klein and Jim Klein and folks like that who are on the coast and are, whoops, sorry about that. Let me turn that off. Sorry. And they are independent, and they have their own, they're doing their own thing, basically. This group I'm working with in the Corpus, Port Aransas area is working on a climate summit. So I'm working with them on a climate summit for November 15th. And I'm working with several different groups and several they're not even attached. I'm working with a group right now, the TED folks, TED, what is it? Technology, Education, Design, TED National International Group. There's a local San Antonio chapter, and we're working on a series of lectures, Zoom meetings that have specialists in 5 different areas of climate. And we'll be interviewing people. And right now we're going through the list and having conversations with people to see about their feasibility and et cetera. So I am not going to be part of, I'm not going to be the leader of some organization that tries to branch out. I'm sort of connecting dots, and I'm finding people who can and are interested in this kind of collaborative work. But I tell you, there are a lot of people out there like that. There are people all the way down to Louisiana. You may be familiar with Louisiana Bucket Brigade or the St. James Parish Rise St. James Group, or there are people all the way down to Rio Grande Valley that are the people I like, the people who are very independent, self-starters. They do their own thing. And while that means it's herding cats, on the other hand, that's what I'm trying to do, is work with people in their own and let them have their own. Like, again, your plastic, your focus is plastic. Mine is more on the emissions. Mine is more on the pollution from air quality perspective. But there's so much territory, everybody can work together. That's how I'm approaching this thing. Good enough?
A good question. Who is next? Liz, you have a question?
Yeah, I wanted to mention, Peter, I really appreciate what you've been saying. You might want to try, our Sierra Club guy in New Orleans is fantastic. So, but that is one chapter. And also the Delta chapter that's in Louisiana is pretty good, but I know our New Orleans guy is fantastic. So you could approach Sierra Club and talk to them about it.
In 2014, I went to New Orleans for a sort of a do-it-yourself pollution prevention conference, which was just outstanding. And that's where I met a lot of folks. And I did meet from Louisiana, from the New Orleans chapter. What's the fellow's name or person's name?
Daryl Malik Wiley.
Well,
Daryl Malik Wiley is.
Yeah, I'm friends with him on Facebook. He seems like a terrific guy. Well, thank you. That's
one thing. So I'm part of the Coalition Against Death Alley and also the Stop Formosa group in Louisiana. So there is a very, for Stop Formosa, there's a very specific target. But yes, what it is people getting together once a week for an hour on Zoom. And there are a couple national organizers also that are involved with that, from Center for Biological Diversity, Earthworks is involved, Earth Justice is involved. And it's a great mix of professional organizers, but also frontline community people. And every kind of, every kind of tactic is looked at in terms of what you need to do, from filing lawsuits all the way down to having marches and demonstrations. So if you can gather people that would, that are interested in all kinds of different levels of actions. And then the other thing is, I want to invite everybody that's here to the Gulf South for the Green New Deal meetings that happen on the first Wednesday of every month. And everyone here is welcome to come because you're all from the Gulf South. And these meetings are very powerful. They're pulled together by Colette Pichon Battle and her Gulf Coast Center for Law and Policy. And I'll put that in the chat before we leave. But it's super powerful because it pulls together people saying, look, there are certain things that we need to do, and we can do them much better as a network. That's what she calls it. We're a network. And it really does help build power. And the second hour of that meeting is people from the specific states going into an hour-long meeting and talking about what their needs are. So that maybe help you build power as well on that. So thank you so much. This was really great. And I'm going to share this, some of this information with people here in Louisiana as well. That's super powerful.
Please. Yeah. I know that New Orleans has been fighting Formosa too here recently. And there is a lot of commonality, and there's a good deal of collaboration between Louisiana Gulf Coast and Texas Gulf Coast now, which is makes my heart soar like an eagle. I'm very glad to see it. And that's what it takes. That's exactly what it takes. Again, because the industry is just so muscular. And I know that Louisiana knows that damn well. So good. Well, thank you. I appreciate that, Liz. Thank you.
And Ryan, you were with the next hand up.
Yeah, so I'm kind of following up on the theme, which is, I guess, number one, I'm really enthused because I think that this whole coalition building thing is what this working group has been building towards. And we're just increasingly discovering that this is already also happening in many other places and that there is a large appetite for it. You know, when you mentioned certain larger organizations, or Roger mentioned this phenomenon of maybe there being some unwillingness to cooperate, and I feel like there's some of it's a matter of branding, right? And people don't want to do something that betrays their brand, or they slip up and they endorse the wrong policy in this list of 1,000 policies. And that we've run into that a couple of times as just a chapter of Climate Reality Project, where we ask ourselves the question, or we email Roger and we say, hey, we want to sign off on this thing. Is it okay to do that? And our chapter specifically, we really do focus on bottom-up organizing. So I think that it enables people to feel free to collaborate. So yeah, and I also just wanted to say I really enjoyed the presentation. I like that it was really Texas focused in the story that you tell and economically focused. Roger didn't mention it, but I think that I personally would love for you to give this presentation to our entire chapter, and beyond just the plastics working group. So anyway, just want to say thank you.
Thanks, Ryan. And I wanted to say that I appreciate very much your points about people wanting to collaborate spontaneously. I think that one thing that sometimes happens, like you talk about, I'd use the word territory. People have different groups may have different territories they feel very protective of, or like you say, branding. They want to be known, and they want to be known how they define how they want to be known. So that can kind of be self-limiting. But on the sort of other human side of that, I find that it often happens that people will disagree with each other, not because the end goal is not commonly accepted, but because either the means or the immediacy of what solution to take or something like that gets clouded. And I'm 66 years old, and I'm enjoying, believe it or not, I'm enjoying getting older because I'm learning more. And some of the stuff I'm learning is to just, if you think of the need, if you think of the smorgasbord of need that is out there when it comes to the environment, everybody can do their own thing. There's plenty of room for collaboration where it makes sense. But for God's sake, let's support each other. It don't matter. It don't matter. Just, it's all good. It's all good. So I appreciate your comments. Thank you.
All right, thanks for that, Ryan and Peter. Maureen, you had the next question?
Yeah, I want to thank you also, Peter. I can't do it as articulately as Ryan, but I'm echoing what he's saying. And what I thought I was hearing, which you just confirmed, is that there's, I wish there was a better metaphor than many ways to skin a cat. I just, but someone come up with, a poet somewhere, Ryan, can come up with a better metaphor. But it seems to me that because there are many ways to approach this, I was curious whether what's been happening in Europe, like a Dutch court recently ruled that Shell is responsible for cleaning up and destruction to the environment, what ramifications that would have in this country. I'm not anywhere near politically sophisticated, so I'd love to hear what you think about that, if there are ramifications.
I think that's a great topic for discussion altogether, because again, that's why Texas is this wall. Texas, I mean, what we've just been through at the legislative session, it's like one end of whatever spectrum that is. And then the concept of the community and commonality that respects the goals we have in common. Yeah, that's I think that what it must do is, especially with a case as big as that, it must open the gate for other lawsuits like it, right, to challenge other companies. And it must inform movements clearly by groups in this country. I mean, I'm thinking of the Children's Climate Pledge. What was the group that?
Juliana.
Yes. So the more, that's why I'm so happy that we have these successes that we had in the Rio Grande Valley and with Formosa Plastics, et cetera. They're rare, but that's okay. We can build on them. I think we can build on them, and then these are sledgehammer blows to the difficulties that we have convincing business and industry to change. That's how I treat them. What do you think? What's your thought?
I think I agree with you. I think the law and money has a tremendous amount. I'm watching shareholder reactions in some of the companies, and how when large funders dropped out of the pipelines, how that brought them to their knees. I'm all for that.
Yeah.
As well as what we do on the ground with our buying soap strips, instead of.
Absolutely. It's back to the smorgasbord. For some people, it's in the street with a sign. For some people, it's boycotting. Krugerrand, or you name it. But it's good. It's good that people are really being very active.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
I have to say, you drove me to drink with your presentation.
Me too, but it's water, so.
Blake, you have your hand up. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, thank you all so much for allowing the Louisiana activist to come in and join you guys. It's been great to see. We definitely have similar fights here in Louisiana as you all do in Texas. So it's really great to see what you guys are watching and what you all are doing about it. Peter, my question specifically, this is some information that I got. I don't have the actual hard data with me, but Jane Patton runs No Waste Louisiana. She's a colleague of mine and Liz's, and she also includes in her plastics presentation data that shows the use of single-use plastics in the public declining, which means that these expansions that the petrochemical industry is planning to pivot away from fossil fuels for transportation into plastic production is becoming even more, as obsolete, if not more so, and more quickly than the use of petroleum for fuel. So it's just something else that I would recommend looking into in this scope of information, because it makes the investment that you talked about, which is very good, of these facilities, it shows that it's a bad investment in the future, and eventually Texas and Louisiana, places like where we live, are going to get stuck with the bill on this investment, and these companies are just going to leave these facilities that they build inoperable. So, and the jobs they plan and everything like that, we're not going to see the return that we're anticipating, or that the industry is promising. So just wanted to comment on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Blake. That's a great comment. I have seen that same kind of reporting that goes in my mind back to what Maureen was saying, the idea that what does it matter if Dutch Shell gets their ass kicked in Britain? There is, I do believe, honestly, a reckoning and an awakening. Again, it's not a Tom Hanks movie. I'm not looking for a rainbow, but the idea that people are genuinely becoming aware. I understand 67% of the country is either alarmed or concerned about climate change. I mean, these things are changing. And I would love to think, and I agree with you 100%, Blake, the concept that when I started talking, I was talking about the inertia that is created by these investments, where to make your money back, you have a generation to pay off by throughput. Well, that's a good point. We may well be stuck with the bill in Texas. I think that's very, very possible. I hope, because if stuck with the bill means we're producing less waste, less pollution.
I have one comment on that. If companies leave Texas and Gulf area, do our taxes go up? Because they are the one who is paying a lot of taxes.
Yeah, and I don't know what the financing is in back of this. Like Brian was asking about what happened with the bill. I don't know what the ask was of the legislature. Was the legislature just supposed to check boxes on yes, award the contract, or did they actually put investment? A lot of questions I don't know about that. Good point though.
That's what happened in New Jersey because of the high taxes. They left and they went to next state, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania and Delaware and all that. And then our taxes went up. So
Yeah, well, of course, you can't move when you got the Permian Basin. You can't stop drilling in the Permian Basin and move somewhere else because of taxes, much less the export facilities on the coast. But it's may end up well being the same thing, like Blake was saying.
but great presentation, and I knew you would do the great job. Peter is our hidden gem, and he's our first friend in San Antonio. so we know Peter for a long time.
Thank you. Thank you all for the opportunity. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Peter. Do we have any additional questions for Peter before we move on to our next topics? Well, great. Let me ask you one last question, Peter. When we talk about organizations and groups and kind of their purposes, the thing I always come back to is kind of what are our marching orders? I like to think that groups of action, for me, because I'm a kind of one that wants to get out there and do something. I'm very restless. What is the action item, or what can we do to further help you out to move forward besides kind of trying to pull coalitions together?
I guess I would really just say, because at this point it's also very, it's informative. It's not even formative yet. I would appreciate, Blake, you talked about the idea of, or Liz talked about the idea of the Green New Deal of the South. Is that the right name? So ideas like that, and I'll be looking up Daryl in Louisiana on Facebook, and I'll make contact with him. And like I say, I've been for a long time following. I really love it. I fell in love with the Louisiana Bucket Brigade, understanding what they do. They go and they capture the air samples in the Teflon bags, and they do the sampling. And there are limitations, but man, it's getting people out there. Mm-hmm. So I'll be interested to follow up if you can put some of that's in chat, I hope.
Yes.
Okay, great.
It is, yes. Thank you, Ryan.
So I'm saving the chat and I'm showing myself the folder just so I don't forget where the folder is. But I guess really just let's keep in touch. And I would be glad to present to quote unquote the chapter and anybody else. And I mean, if we keep in touch and keep the conversation going, that's probably, and the more you learn, if there are opportunities you know of, or you just think, like, in other words, in my conversation today with the people on the coast who are looking at the climate summit, we decided one of the topics for the summit needed to be legal action, because we looked at the award for the 50 million bucks against Foremost, and we looked at the success in the Rio Grande, and some of those were legal, were local Texas Rio Grande legal aid. I'm not sure the name, but the bottom line is that I wouldn't think of who is responsible for doing the legal work when it comes to these court cases. They're probably a gold mine of connections and information too. So that's an example of, you may think of something that may occur to you, and I'll make sure. Now everybody's got my email address, and nobody's safe, but there I am, Peter Bella. So yeah, just be in contact. Because again, it's not really I'm not starting an organization. I'm not.
Peter is a free bird.
Yeah.
Thank you again.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you. And just to kind of give a follow-up for, that action item is, we like to share the videos of our presentations and our group with the chapter and publicly and get it out there. because I think education is a big part of this. So I think this will be good to share and get out there and bring more people into the fold.
Great, and I'll send the presentation to you with all the references, everything, all the charts and everything, or all the information is public domain. I can give you the reference.
Perfect. Great. So Charles had to leave. He is our Austin chair chapter head. But we do have Liz from New Orleans, and we do like to have each of our chapters and Darshana from San Antonio give an update and make sure that if there's anything that we need to know about in terms of plastics, that we can hear that and be able to act on that. So Liz, is there anything from Louisiana that we need to hear today?
Yeah, Blake, help me off if I forget. I just want to say that one thing we're doing is that relates to what we're talking about now is our new representative, Troy Carter, who filled in Cedric Richmond's seat. He made a pledge before he was elected to support the Break Free from Plastic Pollution Act. And so we are going to do a little social media action around that. And I'm really glad that you mentioned in terms of what's going on nationally, because I think that we're going to have a Facebook invite that's going to be up for the month of June, basically telling people to contact him and to gently urge him to keep his promise, support this act, because this is really critical actually to how many of these plants can be built and the petrochemical industry, which is probably why he hasn't co-sponsored it yet. So we're working on that, and we're going to have a carbon capture educating. If people want to come to that, it's June 26th. It's going to be on Zoom. We'll send you the information because some legislature, a permit has been applied for in Louisiana. So we're going to have a carbon capture education. Yeah, June 26th is when it's going to be. Blake, did you have anything to add? Oh, I'm sorry, Darshana.
No, send that information. I would like to know carbon capture. Yeah.
Blake, did you have some follow-up on that?
No, we've had some really good, one of our local papers just did a pro plastics, like sort of editorial that has gotten a decent amount of pushback from organizations that Liz works with, like Coalition Against Death Alley. So if you do, if you want to plug, Liz, your Facebook page, that's a good way to see that little publishing feed was interesting, or satisfying for me to read. But that was that again has to do with our fight against the new Formosa plant that's proposed for St. James Parish. That is being spearheaded by Coalition Against Death Alley and Rise St. James.
Okay.
Thanks, Blake.
Coalition Against Death Alley. Thanks for posting that in the chat there. Darshana, how about down in San Antonio?
I have nothing new this time. Last meeting was, we invited Peter because we had new members at our team who joined. So I just wanted to motivate them and how to take bottom-up actions and those kind of things we talk about. Roger did how to build your climate story. It was a great presentation, well received. Everybody loved it, and so that's all we did last time because that was needed, kind of, to boost people.
Okay.
Because I think it's more people rely on me more than. They come up with the ideas. I said, no, it's not about me. It's about we all have to do it. So that's why I call Roger.
Yeah, and that reminds me that Darshana was the one that connected us with Peter. So definitely want to say thank you, Darshana. And we like to have some type of educational aspect to each of these meetings. So if anyone has ideas, if anyone has a good speaker, if anyone has a good topic, definitely feel free to send that to myself or Ryan or Brittany, so we can kind of act on that and kind of move the group forward. And if there's another organization, that's another one of our goals is to have this be a coalition. So if there's another organization that you'd like to invite, please feel free to bring them in. And if they wanted to give a few minutes and talk about their organization and learn how we can get involved, that would be great too, as long as it's within our wheelhouse of fossil fuels, plastics, and so forth. So.
Brian, I have a question on that. So like this group is like, I mean, how many more people can you kind of accommodate? Because I'm reluctant to like tell my group, okay, join this group, and so because I don't know how many people you can accommodate it,
She's trying to be nice to me. She's saying, how many more people like me can you stand? That's what she's really saying.
Be quiet, Peter.
Yeah, I think in terms of the number of people on the calls, since we are virtual right now, I think we can handle almost unlimited to some degree. But I think in terms of organizations that we want to have reports from every month, I do think that because this is a climate reality organization, that we do want to keep it limited to climate reality partners as far as the main partners. So I think if we could get Climate Reality Houston on board, because I don't believe we've had correspondence with them or haven't heard any interest, that would be a good next step.
Brian, I just mentored like some people from Houston, I think, so I can encourage some of them to come on to this meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they actually had some interest also in helping the chapter rev up. That was my understanding. So I'm going to check in with them and see if they've gotten their pins yet, actually, because we're going to have a pin happy hour, pin ceremony happy hour.
Yeah.
Don't pin them too hard. And I do think that as we come out of this pandemic, that I know there's been some talks already about getting together as a statewide chapter and so forth, and doing some meetups. So I think having the plastics group, if we do have a larger climate reality, we definitely need to have a plastics breakout. I think that would be tremendous, so we can get everyone together and kind of keep.
Yeah.
Did he freeze? No.
I think he froze right at that moment. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Otherwise, he went really quiet.
Yeah.
Well.
And still.
Brian, you're back.
He's back.
Oh, now I see your internet connection is unstable.
You just froze for a moment.
Sorry about that. I was just saying I didn't have anything else on my agenda for tonight. And I'm not sure if you heard me that if we do get together as a Climate Reality Texas and or region, I do want to make sure we do a plastics breakout with everyone so we can bring more people into the coalition and get more Peters out there for us. So
Hey, go Peter.
So any other news for tonight? Anything we need to talk about?
I just want to make one more comment in terms of this building of relationships. I think something that's really interesting to me about climate reality and the mentees that I had in the training is people of all different levels of interest come into climate reality, right? And they're at a really different place than I am in terms of activist experience or organizer experience. And I basically come as a lot of street activism. But so I think it's really important that we're willing to have honest conversations, or just be very honest with each other about our own level of comfort in terms of different actions and different like campaigns and things. And that to let people know, hey, if you don't feel comfortable getting out on the street, like if we want to go out on the street, but if you don't feel comfortable with it, that's okay. Like, or if you want to come try this for the first time, or if you want to, do a letter to the editor for the first time, and to be, compassionate with people in terms of where they're at, because I know there's a lot of people Like, right. And I've actually never been arrested either. I can't believe I'm saying that, but I haven't. But I can't believe I haven't. But I think it's real. I think that level of honesty with each other and allowing for all different levels of activism is super important in this climate crisis stuff, because so many people, yeah, they don't want to see they don't want to see any more plastic garbage, right? But they don't know where to start. So I'm just telling them, like, call Troy Carter and tell him to support this bill. You know, could you start there? And then who knows, maybe in the next year, if we have to do a demonstration, they'll be out on the streets with us.
Mhm. I mean, that's a really good point. You know, I think you have to meet everyone where they are. And we have writers in the group. We have people like Maureen and Ryan that are creative, which I don't have that much creativity in my body. I can get arrested. I'm not sure I could get creative. And maybe that's something we have a further discussion on. You know, if there's certain things in the group, I know early on we tried to dole out some different things that needed to get done. And if, you know, I think we were pretty honest. A few people emailed me and said, Brian, I have no capability of doing that. Please do not have me do that. I'm like, yeah, okay, that's fine. We just needed it to get done. So yeah, I think the group, and similar to what Darshana was saying, is small enough that we can be honest and have these conversations. And if you do have a talent that we don't know about, besides getting arrested, let's use that talent and get the word out for what we're trying to do. So let's use the group as much as we can, or bring people in that we need to get the word out.
Yeah.
Encouraged by both what you've just said and my glass of wine, I wanted to share the fact that I'm a visual artist and I've been working on a plastics menu. So I just sent out a test to a friend of mine in California who's a cook of a hamburger with a credit card in it, and she was horrified. So I think maybe in the creatives we could do that. And Peter, I was going to send you a picture. It's horribly cynical of Welcome to the New Baby from Auntie Oil and Uncle Gas, and it's a pink and blue inhaler. So, I mean, it's awful, but if you can use those, I'd be glad to hand them over. They're not terribly well drawn, but smeary.
Great idea. Wow.
But if they horrify people into going, oh my God, a credit card in my hamburger, in my tacos, on my pizza, you know, in my baby bottle. Oh.
What type of media do you use for it? Are you doing like paintings on canvas? Are you doing pictures? Are you doing?
I don't have a studio space. I just work on a table, so it's smeary pastel and pen and pencil and fingerprints and things. So
very cool.
You know, I mean, someone who is maybe a printmaker could take the idea and print them out in, you know, more popular style. So anyway, now I'm all embarrassed and I have to switch off my mic before I say anything else.
Maureen, did you paint those paintings that is on the wall? Did you draw that? Yeah? Cannot hear you.
Yes, they're mine.
Wow, I knew it. Yeah, beautiful.
Thank you.
We'll see, we have a lot of great talents here, and I think that at some point we should all get arrested together as well as do some artwork. But
and Ryan writes poetry and sings the blues.
Well,
And
some of the best poetry comes from the jail. So, I mean.
That's right. And Ryan.
Some of the best blues too.
And Ryan came to the creative saying, I'm not creative. So I don't.
I was going to say that too, Brian. Be careful saying that around Marine, that you're not creative. You never know.
Well, I might have some hidden talents, but.
We have 74 million cells and they're all creative. So.
I like it. Great inspiration for everyone too.
Just.
Well, all right. Well, thanks everyone for a great meeting tonight. So again, we're looking for, someone to present in July. So if any ideas or, any topics, definitely want to keep it fresh, keep it lively. And, if anyone else would even like to lead the meeting, I'd be up for that too, to have a fresh voice. So definitely want to keep the group moving. Liz, I saw you shaking your head, yes.
Were you going to be in jail, Brian, or?
You never know. I'm always
Fishermen were mentioned in your presentation, Peter, and I think they weren't brought up since then, but I would be very interested in hearing from the fishermen. I know that to some level there must be some community organizing going on in there. They obviously have great incentive, and I've seen fishermen and aquatic marine people be such a powerful force in activism in other regions.
Yeah, this is something they've started to recruit people in the Stop Formosa Plastics in Louisiana, is to have the fisher folk speak out, because and it goes off to the Green New Deal, definitely. Absolutely.
I like that. I wonder if Surfrider, we could have a national speaker because it's a virtual meeting. I wonder if they have any resources for speakers, since that's their bailiwick to some degree.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, good idea. Cool.
Okay, cool. I like that.
Just finally, for Ryan's comment, I put this article. It's free access. It's about this Diane Wilson, the woman, the short video that I had in there. Yeah, third generation shrimper, and she's all over that, protecting the bay because of shrimping.
Fantastic. When you mentioned her, I thought that you said third generation tripper, and I did not understand what that meant. So I'm thankful for that.
Third generation shrimper? Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. I assumed it wasn't about psychedelics. Yeah, I didn't know. All right. Well, thank you guys. I have to head out. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
See you next time.
Well, great. Thanks, everyone. And I'll send out the meeting minutes with the text of all the chats and all that good stuff. We'll keep going.
Okay, thank
Great.
you.
Yeah,
Bye-bye.
I'll send you the presentation. Thanks again. Good to meet y'all.
Yeah, great to meet you too.
Thank you.
All right, next time.
Bye.